Good morning, everybody. Dave Neal here with your Morning Rush. It's Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, and here are all the stories I've got for you today. The stats are in from Sunday night's Golden Globes. Viewership was up, and we've got exclusive jokes that Nikki Glaser reveals on Howard Stern were too risky for primetime TV. Plus, John M. Chu discusses the Britney Spears biopic in the works. And Justin Baldoni's lawyer continues discussing his upcoming lawsuit, the $250 million beef with New York Times. And former friend of Ron Owens, Rich Lieberman, discusses his beef with the Ron Owens GoFundMe and the shoddy journalism that didn't disclose personal friendships. Also, New Yorkers are not happy after the first business day of congestion pricing. I'll share what some of the disgruntled drivers have to say. All these stories and more coming up next on The Rush. All right, before we get to the Golden Globes updates, I have to share with you what might be my favorite story. Dozens of people were snowed in Britain's highest pub. Have a listen to this.
Dozens of people are snowed in at Britain's highest pub after ignoring weather warnings. An Arctic blast sent temperatures well below freezing in North Yorkshire on Saturday the 4th, but this didn't stop more than 30 customers trekking to Tan Hill. Despite amber warnings of snow, customers still went for a drink at the weekend and are still holed up in the world-famous boozer. 32 guests and 6 members of staff are currently snowed in. The team are well prepared with their electric power coming from a generator and enough food to last the month, although it's unlikely to come to that.
I want to stay for a full month in North Yorkshire, or wherever the heck they said this was. Tan Hill Inn. Invite me. We'll podcast from there. I mean, look, the English are not known for their cooking, but I'm telling you, British pub food is as good as it gets. The accompaniment by the sticky floors and the beers. I mean, come on, I'm all in. This feels like a Christmas movie I didn't know I needed. Would you want to be snowed in anywhere else? All right, in Golden Globes news, the 2025 ratings from Sunday night are up. 10.1 million viewers, up 7% from last year, Paramount says. Now, I've read a lot of the comments about Nikki Glaser hosting, and people are going to hate on anything. They really are going to hate on anything. Although the general viewpoint is that she knocked it out of the park. She wasn't too risque. She played to the audience in the room and she played to the audience at home. It's a tight needle to thread. And look, she's having her moment. She knocked it out of the park with the Tom Brady roast. She's a hard worker. She knows what she's doing. But there is one beef right here. Check this out. The total people watched, 10.1 million, was sourced from Video Amp rather than Nielsen, the industry standard, as CBS parent company Paramount Global is currently in a contract dispute with the audience measurement company. I want to see a movie about this. Contract disputes with Nielsen? I bet you that guy runs a tough bargain. Either way, viewers increased 7% from last year's show. And look, I mean, for the last 10 years, views have been going down and down and down. So really cool for them to right the ship. Hosted last year by Joe Coy, the 2024 ceremony was CBS's first time airing the Golden Globes and achieved a 50% increase from NBC's 2023 Globes telecast. Their viewership was impacted by the fact that 2023 marked the first Globe ceremony to take place after the scandals that racked the now defunct Hollywood Foreign Press. So a lot of drama coming out of the world of Hollywood for sure. Speaking of which, how about this story? I need to get a hold of this lawsuit here. Skip Bayless and Fox Sports sued by hairdresser for sexual harassment. If this story has any merit to it, which, you never want these things to be true because you want to think that people are protected at work. Although I'm guessing the sports journalism world is one of the slimiest places to work. You got men who are just reeking of egotistics and, trying to go back to their high school glory days. If this story is true, not looking good for Skip Bayless. They allege that he tried to pay the hairdresser $1.5 million for sex, which, by the way, is a lot of money. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a lot of money. But she, jokes it off saying, Skip, you got a wife at home. So anyway, does she have any evidence of this happening? What's the HR trail look like? I want to believe her. I really do. If you guys are interested, I'll do a live stream reading the actual lawsuit, the court documents. Let me know. Shoot me a message if you think that's something you guys would care about. All right. Well, Britney Spears is going to be very involved, as they say, in a biopic. Some people pronounce it a biopic. I go biopic, and I don't think I'm ever going to be changed on that. Am I saying it wrong? I'm going with biopic, not biopic. Director John M. Chu confirmed that he's got this project in the works. Here's what he had to say, speaking to E.T.
Biopic. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's very
how
early.
How involved is she?
She's going to be very involved. I haven't really started anything fully yet. We are. But she will be very involved in this. I have ideas and things of an approach and things, but it's very, very early.
So early on, but John M. Chu, of course, directed the bombshell Wicked movie. He's one of the hottest directors in Hollywood right now. Let me tell you something. You got to do Britney Spears right. You really do. I mean, the poor lady has been, controlled since, her mid-teens, right? She's had handlers trying to leech success off of her. And I think if we can just tell her story as a heartbreak, she grew up in a time before a lot of child actors and celebrities were being protected. I mean, they're still exploited, but not to the extent. I mean, the Britney Spears, the Tara Reeds, the Amanda Bynes, there's a whole generation of people that it was like, what were we even doing? And of course, even before then, the Judy Garlands and the Brooke Shields. I mean, of course, it goes on. But finally, it's like, tell her story and do it right. I'll be very interested when that comes out. All right, so Nikki Glaser was on Howard Stern. And, of course, the formidable, iconic Howard Stern, she was discussing the jokes she decided not to tell Sunday night. Here's what she had to say. She's going to share some of them right here.
Some of these would get pitched and we're like, we can't say that on CBS.
Oh, good.
We cannot say that to these people's faces. So I go, move it to the Stern file. Like we can do it on Stern. The Golden Globes is the only show where you can see the biggest stars in movies and television joined together with the same goal. Getting out of here tonight before Dax Shepard asked them to do his podcast.
That's great.
Which, by the way, Dax Shepard is probably bigger than Howard Stern at this point. But I get the joke. All right. I'm just saying. He just signed a $100 million contract. You know what I mean?
Time all of you will be in the same room together until the Diddy trial.
Right.
So at one point in the show, I go, oh, look, it's two-time Holocaust survivor Adrian Brody, because he's been in 2 Holocaust films.
Right.
If Adrian Brody could go back in time, he would thank baby Hitler for his career. And that...
See, it all comes down to a time and a place. Now, I'll have people that say, there's never a joke you can tell about X, Y, and Z. Nikki Glaser did receive a little pushback from people. Namely, one of the victims of Diddy, the lawyer, said, it's inappropriate to be joking about this. It's one of those things. Society will always, have an issue with edgy jokes. Does that mean they shouldn't be told? I think they should be handled by people that are really good at what they do. And Nikki's been a comedian for 20 plus years. And, I've said this before and I'll say it again, like anyone who's at the Golden Globes is fair game for ridicule. Like Nikki speaks for the audience, not for the people in that room.
I like that.
The Wild Robot is nominated tonight, and by that I mean Nicole Kidman after 2 white wines. I wish we could have done that, but it's just, if she makes a face, I think she would have been cool with it, but you never know.
Right.
Daniel Craig is nominated for his performance in Queer, which is a movie and not just what my Uncle Chucky calls Wicked. I really liked that one. Nicolas Cage is here, and so is the band of skeletons that follows him playing ragtime jazz. That one was just too weird.
I really like this idea that when you're working on something like this, you have a Stern file.
Literally called the Stern file.
So here, Howard Stern questions why they don't get paid more. And of course, Nikki's response is, hello. What you're getting paid in is you're getting your future ticket sales to your stand-up shows.
I'm still shocked by the fact that these guys don't pay any kind of money to the host. And it's a tremendous amount of work.
I feel well paid for what I do. Like, I feel I'm all right. Like, and at this first year when you're just trying to prove yourself, I honestly would have done it for free. It's an insane platform to be on. It's not about the money for me. It was really
Do you hear how she said this first year? I mean, if you're good at this, you can have a run at it 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, a lot of people don't want to do the job because it's a thankless job. Comedians don't mind doing the job because it sells your comedy. And it's like you can then go and sell out shows. And you can make a fortune if you can fill theaters across the country. And Nikki does. What did she say? She went to over 20 Taylor Swift concerts this year, several out of the country, paying for her friends to go with her. She's just living her life, you know? But hey, work hard, play hard.
When people say like you work so hard, I'm like, who wouldn't? Like, I just don't understand when I see opportunities. I've definitely done some things where I didn't work that hard because the stakes weren't that high.
It's a great job. And have they already asked you to do it again next year? Were they that thrilled with you?
I mean, they haven't asked me formally. There's been some like chatter about it from people who are like, you know, it's not really up to me, but you know, I can't imagine they wouldn't. I mean, it's like, it's hard to get, just not even because I killed, but even if I would have done fine, it's hard to find people to do these shows. Like, it was funny to me when I got asked to do it. They're like, do you want to host the Golden Globes? I'm like, who's turning this down? But it turns out like a lot of people do. Like,
well, you know why they turn it down. It's a tough gig.
It's a tough gig, and you got to make fun of your peers, your contemporaries, and all that. I'll do it. not that they want me. But I'll just be on the red carpet sharing my hair care routine. All right. Next story up, we've got the Bay Area broadcaster who's beginning to do his own research into the Laura Owens fiasco, as it were. Coming up next. As you guys know, we've been covering extensively all things Clayton Echard, Bachelor versus Laura Owens. And as Laura Owens is being investigated by county prosecutors with a $140,000+ bill, she's owed Clayton for legal fees, which are from, faking a pregnancy. Now her father's got a GoFundMe, which they said was friends of Ron Owens, but we know it's actually their own family. Now, what's interesting about this, and I'm going to share, there are people looking into this now in the Bay Area. For the most part, if you weren't following the juicy gossip and details of the fake paternity scandal, you might not be too into this. But Rich Lieberman, whose video I'm going to share right now, I guess was mentored by Ron Owens back in the day, had a little bit of a falling out, and now he's voicing his opinion on the articles written about Ron Owens. The most interesting part about the articles written about Ron Owens is they're promoting his GoFundMe, but not sharing his degenerate gambling addiction. And this is interesting, right? Because this is a man who's made millions of dollars being a trusted voice in the San Francisco community. And some people think now they're kind of coming after their aging fan base, asking for money when they've got horse farms in other states, they've got rental properties, they go on expensive horse showing events, and they say, really, does this family need the money? Well, now we have Rich Lieberman, with his own personal experience, starting to question things. Have a listen.
That isn't already known. I'd heard rumors. I've been talking to Ron for years, but I knew about the deal with his daughter. Not that it got this compelling in a sort of a negative way. And he's got possibilities, legal issues, which probably brings upon hiring a very prominent lawyer, which costs money, and the health issues, which obviously, again, I am totally, I know he got a good pension from AFTRA, and that's supposed to cover all the medical costs and all that. So I won't get into that. I don't know. But the thing with the gambling disturbs me. And I don't call him out. I don't belittle him because of the gambling. It's an addiction. It's a sickness. The chickens have come home to roost, obviously. You get to a point where you can't cover, and it's awkward, and you feel, I've been in this situation, not to this extent, but if he truly, and it's not his fault, if this was a PR campaign, these articles, and these are friends of his, I know one guy is, and if that is not put forth in the article like it was not, and you have people donating money who are living very modestly, shall we say, then that doesn't work in my world.
And I totally agree. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that you have the San Francisco Chronicle and other news organizations basically giving free publicity of a guy's fundraiser, but not sharing the full story about how they got to where they are. I don't know. Listen, it's not just my gripe. There are articles being written. You're going to hear a lot more about this. It might not sound like a big deal, but people go to their newspapers, their journalists, expecting a certain level of authenticity and a certain level of, spine. And if you have a fluff piece that's written about somebody or half written with inaccuracies being re-edited and all of that, very, very dishonest. And in the modern world and people already questioning the motives of mainstream media, you have to be on top of it. You really do. They need some sort of like rating system for every journalist so you can rate the authenticity or accuracy of their reporting. All right, well, here's the reporting of News Nation. You got Chris Cuomo interviewing Justin Baldoni's lawyer, which is power attorney Brian Friedman, regarding their upcoming $250 million lawsuit against New York Times. Have a listen to this.
You saying that they got changed copies of the communications, or that they changed the communications to remove emojis? Are you blaming the New York Times for doing that?
And this is in response to emojis were removed, or at least one emoji was removed from a text message from Blake Lively, from the publicist of Justin Baldoni, which would have implied sarcasm, satire, and by that emoji being removed, it changed the tone of the message that was used to smear Justin Baldoni. Now, if you ask me, there's more to the story than that. But in situations where it's like a he said, she said, in a case like that, a removed emoji could be the $1 billion or $250 million emoji.
Blaming the New York Times for participating with Blake Lively's publicists and engaging in this campaign where they actually were part of facilitating the complaint getting filed with the CRD, which is the Civil Rights Division, and knew the complaint was getting filed, encouraged them to file the complaint, had a copy of the complaint before it was filed, and once it was filed, they went with a story.
So that can be all true, and I'm not here to push back because these guys probably know a lot more about it than I do. But people are wondering, is this lawsuit just a PR campaign and a reason for them to expose all of the text messages? Which, by the way, isn't a bad idea if you're Justin Baldoni. If you think the truth is out there, people read all the text messages, one way to get them out there is to put them all in a lawsuit and let the chips fall as they may. But also, if New York Times wasn't who removed the emoji, then they are just reading off of the court documents, even though that would look shady. I don't know if that's against the law. As far as like, you could look at the New York Times and think they're sleazy, that they had a story they were ready to run with and do favors for Ryan Reynolds and all that. But I don't know if it's illegal. And I think Brian Friedman knows that, but hey, you got to go, they're going after the big dogs. They're trying to get big, clicks. And it's not always, I hate to say it, but it's not always about winning in the courtroom. It's about winning over the public.
Breaking news. They didn't have any more time available to give you. They gave you the most time they could. You chose not to respond. Is that a fair charge?
Not at all. We did respond, and we challenged actually the veracity of the story, and we challenged actually the veracity of the text messages, and specifically said that those messages were cherry-picked and used out of context. Was there a follow-up phone call? Was there, please tell us more? What do you mean by cherry-picked and taken out of context? There was no investigative journalism done whatsoever. It was a complete reckless disregard for the truth. And why was that, Chris? You know why that was. Because Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are who they are.
I mean, hey, it sounds conspiratorial, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see if this thing goes to trial or what comes next. It'll be messy, and we'll be here to continue covering it as things go down. All right, so Sunday was the rollout a couple days ago of this new toll in New York City, a $9 congestion fee during rush hour. Motorcyclists entering Manhattan's busiest neighborhoods have to pay up to $9 a day in congestion charges. New York City's the first in the nation to do this congestion relief. It's a little scary. It's a little scary to me. I mean, listen, you might be seeing this in other crowded places. Like I'd hate to find out that it costs more money to go down Broadway just because it's the time of day people want to go down Broadway. It used to be you would be rewarded with the HOV lane if you had multiple people, but now it's like you're going to be disincentivized to travel by adding more money to the fee. But the other side of the coin is that, hey, maybe it does free up the streets. Here's what NBC News has to say.
Congestion pricing, it started. What do you think?
It's a very bad thing. For people are surviving very bad.
The MTA this morning said the Sunday rollout at exactly midnight was a success.
Traffic is good. It's flowing freely. It's normal volumes, and there haven't been any exceptional incidents where people approaching the barriers and traffic changing. That hasn't happened yet.
There are 1,400 cameras taking tolls and more than 800 signs advising drivers they're about to be charged.
There's no traffic getting in, so I guess it works.
So you're thinking it's not so bad?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
A reminder, the zone stretches from 60th Street all the way to the southern tip of Manhattan. The FDR and the West Side Highway are still free until you get off and venture onto city streets, with some exceptions like Uber drivers.
So this guy says, well, if I have passengers in my car, I don't have to pay. But then what if I'm going to pick up a passenger and I don't have someone in my car? He doesn't even know. People don't really know how this is going to work. And because they're cameras, imagine if you have to wait a couple months to find out and all of a sudden you get a flood of tickets in the mail. I don't know. Sounds kind of sketchy. I've got one resident of the Upper East Side and he does not like what he is seeing. So this guy lives on a one-way, which means he lives above the congestion zone, but then has to drive around it, so he gets charged for going 1 block away. Look, I know this doesn't affect a lot of people, but this could be coming to a town near you.
Starting today, the congestion pricing is going into effect. $9 each day that you pass 60th Street. And while I disagree with it for many reasons, for me in particular, it really hits home because I live right here on 61st Street in this building, and my car is right there, parked in front of my building. And if I want to turn around to go uptown to visit my kids who live on 79th Street, I have to pay $9 to go around the block because this is a one-way street and that's a one-way street.
How much do you love your kids?
And there's no way for me to get uptown without going around the block and paying $9. And I think something has to be sorted out for Manhattan residents.
There it is. Something indeed has to be sorted out. I find it interesting. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. All right, well, that's it for the congestion news, but I have a couple other stories I wanted to get to. Here's Mel Robbins talking about why you should be okay with other people gossiping about you. Now, we all know the phrase, like, what you think about me is none of my business.
If you're worried that people are gossiping about you, let them. Let them gossip about you. Here's why. You can't control it.
It's going to happen anyway.
Yes. And so if you can't control it, why on earth would you allow any time or energy to be wasted?
Yeah.
It's an act of self-torture. So let them gossip. And when you say that, it's a relief because you actually acknowledge the thing that you've been afraid of. And it's
Now, look, I totally agree, and yet I've had such a big issue myself with sometimes feeling mischaracterized. We have a community here in Niche that, are very judgmental in some ways. Now, not our audience. We have a great audience, but others. And you see people mischaracterize something you're doing or twist your words around or take a viewpoint that's like mischaracterizing the intention. And it's really frustrating because then other people will hear what someone else had to say about you and you didn't say it. And it's like, gosh dang, it's so annoying. But I agree with her. I mean, what's the alternative? Just trying to, nonstop be frantic and worry. It's like, I think anyone who's willing to talk trash about you says more about them than it does about you. And if you remember that, maybe that's a little bit easier to kind of let it go.
It's like you're allowing it without allowing it. But then don't forget, you have power.
Yeah.
Let me remind myself that I get to choose what I think about myself. I get to decide what I do and what I don't do, whether or not I respond or not. And I get to decide who I spend time with. And so the bigger question becomes, if you're busy worrying about, which means you're expending time and energy, people who are gossiping about you, why would you want to be friends with them?
Yeah.
And so now you take responsibility for your own part in chasing people that aren't treating you in a way that you deserve.
Yeah. Look, hey, codependency and, anxious attachment issues. Bingo. Well, 4 years ago, we had a deadly insurrection on our nation's capital. And just to let folks know that democracy still does exist, here is Vice President Kamala Harris, who's president of the Senate, reading the results certifying the 2024 election.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected, President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025.
And that, folks, had no deaths, no storming, no raiding of the Capitol, just democracy at play. We'll be back this afternoon. Make sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you want to join the Patreon and put some bread in the tip jar, go to patreon.com/Dave Neal. We'll be live this morning. Otherwise, we'll see you then. I'm Dave Neal. This is The Rush.